Hidden Gems, Episode 40, Super Knizia III. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening to our show.
Back to that 2-week schedule.
Back to that busy 2-week schedule.
Having to get used to this. I have to come up with interesting things that I've done in a much shorter period of time.
Well, I've got a lot to talk about today. I'm on cloud 9 right now.
Oh, yeah?
I am hype, as the kids would say. I'm turned up right now.
Oh, no.
Because my Miami Dolphins are 3-0.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
They are the only undefeated team in the AFC. All afternoon, I was actually at Buffalo Brothers, which is a restaurant. It's a chain restaurant, I think, in Raleigh, but that's where all the Bills people watch football in Raleigh. And our mutual friend, Mike and Stacy Regan, are huge Bills fans.
Oh.
Because they're from New York.
I knew that.
And so they invited me and Talia to watch the game with them at Buffalo Brothers. And we show up and there are like 200 Buffalo Bill people there. And their jerseys are tailgating at Buffalo Brothers, okay? And there are like 3 Dolphin people there. And I just want to like crawl under the table. You know what I mean?
Because are you suited up in dolphin wear?
I wasn't. And I'm ashamed to say I'm a big Dolphin fan. I really am. But we have been so bad for so long that every Dolphin shirt that I used to have that fit me no longer fits me anymore. And I have not re-upped my shirt stash. So I wore green, but I did not have any Dolphin gear on.
By the way, let me ask, did you grow up in the Don Shula?
I did.
Jim Kick, Larry Zonka?
Well, no, not that far back.
Oh,
So that was
okay.
my dad.
Okay, that was me, but go ahead.
I'm not as old as you, Bill.
Right.
No, that was my dad. So my dad's from Florida. And he decided he was going to be a Dolphins fan. So I became a Dolphins fan because when I was a kid, the Carolina Panthers did not exist.
Yep.
And I grew up during those glory days of Dan Marino, Mark Clayton, Mark Duper, great football. But the Bills were the bane of our existence because they were always the team that kept us out of the Super Bowl, right? And so I hate the Bills.
Is this a bad time to tell you that I was a Bills fan when I was a kid?
That doesn't surprise me.
So I have a great response to this, so go ahead.
All right, no, go
Explain.
ahead. Let's hear it.
So when I was growing up, I was a Baltimore Colts fan before they moved, right? And then they came dead to me when Irsay loaded them up on the plane in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah, Jim Irsay. They had to move. Yeah,
exactly. And so my mother, for Christmas, and I'm trying to remember how old I was, maybe 8 or 9 years old, bought me a Miami Dolphins pajamas. And those were the arch nemesis of the Baltimore Colts because they were in the same conference at the time.
They were.
And I just loathed the Miami Dolphins. And so this is actually explaining a lot to me.
This totally makes sense. This is prophetic in a way. It really is.
It is.
So yeah, if you're listening to this years in the future, maybe, or if you just don't care anything about football, the Buffalo Bills right now, most people are just wanting to give them the Lombardi trophy already. They're like, they're not going to lose all season. They're the best team in the league. Why is anybody even bothering? And the Miami Dolphins won a thriller today. If my voice goes out, it might. It's because I've been yelling and screaming all afternoon. It was just nuts.
Wow. And you survived leaving the place, I guess.
Yeah. I did survive. Everybody was pretty civil, but it was a crazy game. But yeah, I'm hyped, Jason. No cap.
Wow.
Sounds like it.
That's funny. It'll be interesting when you hit the downer games today. I feel that enthusiasm is still peaking.
Somebody beat that.
I can't beat that. So, Bill, you got to go next.
No, I can't. But I will say I'm in the middle of another renovation. I don't know if I talked to you here or not, but I've certainly told you guys that I ended up expanding my living room after living in the house for 20 years. And I bought a bar on Facebook Marketplace because when we extended the living room, the focal point was the fireplace and we added like 8 feet on the end of it. And now you had the space where there was nothing to do. So I bought that. The bar sat over there. And then I put the wine fridge and the beer fridge right behind it that just stacked up on top of each other. And my wife decided that looks a little bit too much like college. And I'm like, what's wrong with that?
It's funny. My wife accuses me of that kind of thing very often.
All the time.
She's like, this isn't a dorm room. It's a house.
Right. So unfortunately, one of our good friends is a general contractor. And she says, why don't you take this wall out and make like a dry bar there and inset the two things? So now several $1,000s later, that's exactly what we're doing in the process of that. So met the guy who's doing it and he is an absolute beast. It was just amazing how fast he worked, how well he does the job. And I'm like making him brownies. Feeling like my masculinity has been challenged today. But I brought some of the brownies to you guys too.
I know we appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate that for sure.
That's my exciting thing. I can't wait to get it done. Of course, you guys will never come over because we can't game anywhere else but here.
Nowhere else but here.
Yeah, but yes.
Cool. What else you got, Chris? I know one that you have, and I've been participating in it as well.
You have. I think this is one that we'll talk about together, and I'm super excited to talk about it. This is one I've been wanting to talk about for a couple episodes, and I've just been having to push it back. But I played a new video game. You know, it's amazing how much video gaming I have gotten in since I put Elden Ring on the back burner for a little bit. I'm not done with it.
It's surprising that you haven't gotten to any of the recommendations that I've thrown out there.
I'm getting there. I totally am going to play Tunic once it's on the Switch. I promise. But this game is a great game that I'm getting ready to talk about. So I know I talked about Mighty Goose and Untitled Goose Game, I think a couple episodes ago.
Yep.
But I realized I didn't really give those scores. We only really score our board games, but I think it might help.
So I'm going to ask a quick clarification. Is this also a Switch game?
It is.
Don't you own a PS5?
I do.
So isn't the other games like 8-bit games? Like they look
I'm
like...
telling you, the indie scene on the Switch is...
Yes.
It's good.
That is the thing. It's just so easy to get on the eShop and download a game for like $10. And the indie games are so good. I'm playing another one now called Ender Lilies. I'll talk about it later. It's awesome as well.
That's funny.
But it's just easy to get on there and play.
Shelling out $70 for Elden Ring or whatever
Exactly.
it is.
Exactly. So yeah, the game we're going to talk about is Elec Head. That's
Okay.
Elec
It's
Head.
electric.
Like electric head. Elec Head. Yeah. Oh, wait. I was going through a thought and then I lost it. Oh, yeah. So scoring. I would have scored Mighty Goose and Untitled Goose Game like 4 out of 6. They're good games. They were fun. This game to me is a 6 out of 6 game. It really is. I'm really partial to puzzle games. We've talked about that on here before. Jason and I love them. And this is no exception. This is definitely a puzzle game. But to me, it just nails it. So basically what you're doing in Elec Head is the electrical grid worldwide, it seems, has gone down. Everything is just a blackout. And you are a battery, maybe, Jason?
Yeah, like the watch batteries.
Yeah. A button battery. We got to get this right because we got chastised for not being able to figure out that Baba was a sheep. Multiple people gave us grief about that, but I think you're a battery. Okay. So the way the game works is everything in the level is metallic. So if you jump on a wall or a platform or a floor, as soon as you land on it because you're electrified, you power it. It turns on. It may or may not do something. Okay. But oftentimes when you jump on something, it will open a door or activate a platform. It'll make a platform move back and forth. Or it might turn something on that will destroy you.
Like a laser.
A laser or something that will kill you, right? And so you're trying to figure out how to navigate through these levels, getting stuff open that you need to get open, getting where you want to go without getting destroyed. That sounds fine. But what really makes the game good is about 20 to 30 minutes into the game, you get an ability where you can actually detach your head from your body. Have you gotten to this yet?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. This is where it really starts getting good. So you can actually throw your head around the board. Like you can throw your head up to a platform or across a gap or into a tight space to power something. But the catch is if you don't reunite your body with your head in 10 seconds, you explode.
Right.
You die, basically. And a lot of these puzzles are geared to where you have to kind of hurry when you do that action. It's just so fun, I think. The cleverness of the puzzles, I think, in this game are top tier, especially once you get deep into the game. There were a few where I was just like, wow, that was cool.
There are some tough ones.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's hard for sure. What did you think of it, Jason, so far? I know you haven't finished it. I've finished it, but I know you're just starting it.
Yeah, I've played a lot of puzzle games, and this one's definitely good. I enjoy it. I'm waiting for the twist to come, and I don't know if there is one. Maybe there's not.
Maybe.
But I've enjoyed it for sure so far. Similar to many games like Celeste and whatnot with the strawberries, there's these extra things that you can seek out and find that are slightly more difficult, off the beaten path type things.
Yep.
So those have been fun. I haven't gotten all the way through yet, so
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're worth finding. I will say this is one of the games I actually 100%ed because I enjoyed it so much. And if you do find all those little extra things, it gives you an alternate ending, basically, for what it's worth. But yeah, I totally agree. Those little extra things, just give it more life. I think it's awesome. You should check it out. A Leckhead for sure.
Well, man, with all these renovation projects and video games and everything, my update's going to sound kind of lame, but I think it actually relates to our topic for the evening slightly, or to one of the games that we're going to be talking about tonight. So I actually just read a book, and it's called Cloud Cuckoo Land. Have either of you guys ever heard of this book?
Never heard of it.
It has a very odd name, but it's actually by Anthony Doerr. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, but he wrote the book All the Light We Cannot See. Have you heard of that?
I've heard of it. Yeah, not read.
So that book, I tried to read through it. I made it like a quarter of the way through and then just kind of got bored. It's a fantastically written book. My wife read the whole thing. She said it was great, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't get through it. But she was telling me about this book, and it's a story. It's parallel timelines. So you have a timeline that's in the ancient past in Constantinople, and then a timeline that is in 2020 Idaho. And then a timeline that's like some unknown time in the distant future. And as you go through, you start to figure out that there are connections between these timelines. I don't think it's giving away anything. That one of the connecting threads is this ancient manuscript that is this story called Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Okay.
And the narrative of the story ties into the narratives of what's going on in each of these time periods. And it's like merging all these time periods together in a way. It's a pretty cool book.
Sounds cool.
I would recommend it. It's long, but I enjoyed it. And it'll tie into something in the future.
Got it. Something we're going to talk about in this episode?
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet. Awesome.
All right. Was that all of our topics? Do we got
I think
more?
so. I think it's cocktail time.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, we don't have one in front of
No,
us.
we do not. I have to go get it.
All right. Go for it.
Cue the elevator music. I'll be right back.
All right.
And we're back. Bill,
Crazy. Yeah.
have you ever had a Jaeger bomb, sir?
I had thought I did, but apparently I have not. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I have. It's been a while.
I'm in a good mood today, guys. The Dolphins are 3-0. Had a couple beers, just
and
feeling
Buffalo
good.
lost.
Buffalo lost. Life is good right now. So, as we often do with Reiner Knizia episodes, we often have a Jägermeister themed cocktail. So I thought we would just go all out, just go Jaeger bomb,
Carpet bomb.
Yeah.
crush some box inserts on our head. So Jaeger bomb, if you don't know, is 1.5 ounces of Jägermeister and 6 ounces of Red Bull.
Oh, Red Bull. That's right.
Wait a minute. This is 7 p.m. at night.
Yeah, 7 p.m. at night. 7:30 actually.
Yeah.
Do you know how to drink a bomb drink? You do.
This is
Oh,
going
you
to
drop
destroy
it in?
me. I drink no caffeine ever.
Yeah. I know.
Oh yeah, we're doing this. So I told Jason to bring some shot glasses because I don't have any, and he brought the world's tallest shot glasses ever.
You didn't specify, man.
I didn't. I should have, I guess. So I guess we're going to have to pour it in there. But typically what you do in a bomb drink is you drop the shot glass in the drink,
And then you shoot it.
and then by rule, you drink it as fast as possible.
Okay.
You got that, Bill?
Yes, I do. Oh, man. I feel like I'm at a frat party.
Oh, yeah. Let's
Bull
go.
smells so gross.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh, God. This is a lot.
It is.
I think you barely beat me.
I just didn't set the glass down fast enough for that, did you?
Yeah, you did. You beat me by half a second.
If I don't go to sleep tonight, I blame you.
Okay.
Wow, Chris.
We're keyed up. We're ready.
That was something.
All right, I get myself together here. So a couple of quick notes before we get into the reviews. So we just want to talk a little bit about business, little podcast stuff. So there's been a couple of exciting things happening in the podcast. So if you've been listening for a while, we've mentioned many, many times on the podcast. I'm already messing my words up.
The podcast.
I think it's in my mind right now, obviously. But Mary and Ravindra Prasad. Ravindra is Snooze Fest on BGG. Great friends of the podcast. They've been wonderful to us. They've been wonderful to me as a person, just in the time that I've known them in the hobby. They've been really great to me, and I appreciate them. They're moving to New Zealand. They'll be missed here, but Ravindra has graciously volunteered himself to run a Discord channel for Hidden Gems. So I'm happy to announce that Hidden Gems officially has a Discord channel now. Woo-hoo. So I would encourage you, if that's your thing, if that's your preferred platform or something that you really enjoy, to get in there. I'm not super savvy on Discord, and I will just go ahead and say that myself and probably Bill and Jason and Cameron might be in there from time to time. Not all the time, but as much as we can be. But Ravindra will be managing things, and so we appreciate that. But we would encourage you to get on there because Discord doesn't really work unless there are a lot of people in there, just kind of having a discussion. So if there's something you want to talk about, start a channel, start chatting it up. We'd love to hear people's commentary and thoughts on there.
Yeah, admittedly, for as much as I'm in the tech industry, I don't use Discord a whole lot myself either. So we'll be ramping up on it, but
yeah,
we're excited to have it out there as another option.
I know, Bill, you're pretty knowledgeable about Discord, I think.
Well, I did. When we started playing with the Twitch TV stuff, I had to kind of get a crash course on it, and I use it for VR stuff. So there's a lot of discussions there that you can't find other places. So it's a great place for information. Absolutely.
Awesome. And then the last little item of business I wanted to mention. So Ghidorah, I think everybody knows Ghidorah now. He was on the show a couple episodes ago. He helps us manage our BGG Guild, has done another awesome thing. So Ghidorah, we really appreciate it. He has generated another geek list, and it's a lengthy one. I don't know how this guy finds the time to do this, but somehow he does, and he helps us out a ton. But basically what he's done is, if you're familiar with our guild, to me, in my opinion, the best part about our guild is one post. It's called Gem Miners Wanted, where everybody who's new to the guild or who has been in the guild for a while can go in there and just leave recommendations of, hey, this is a game that I think is underappreciated or is not talked about, that I think is good and that people should play. Doesn't mean that we'll necessarily review it, although I look there often for recommendations. But it's just a way for other people who have similar interests to see, hey, maybe I should check this game out. Ghidorah has taken all of those recommendations and compiled them into a geek list. Okay. So I encourage you to get in our guild, click on that geek list, see what people have recommended, add your own entries, games you think we should play. And then what we're going to do is, for episode 50, which is coming up.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It's hard to believe.
Yeah. We're on 40 now. So we're only 10 away. We're going to look at the games that have the most thumbs up or plus ones or positive comments. There are some entries that have negative comments. We won't count those. But anything good about the game. And we'll pick out the 3 games that have the most traffic, I guess, for lack of a better word, the most activity. And we will review those games for episode 50. So if you feel strongly about one you really want us to play and review, get in the guild, get on that list, and chime in.
Sounds good.
Sound good? Y'all good with that?
Yeah. That'd be cool.
Awesome.
All right. Well, you got some more Reiner Knizia tidbits for us this week?
No more Knizia tidbits. I'm all out. We're just going into the Knizia games here. I actually was tossing around ideas with the guys on how we should name these episodes going forward, because my thought with Super Knizia 3 was kind of to do like a Super Bowl thing, like Super Bowl 3, Super Bowl 4.
I immediately thought you were throwing out a reference to Super Mario 3.
Right.
So I guess I'm just going to keep changing it up every week. But obviously, this is going to be Reiner Knizia themed. We're going to continue to do this throughout the life of our podcast, because the guy just has a ton of games that are worthy of review. And 2 of these games are Spiel recommendations. So we are approaching that 2013 Spiel Losers episode is coming up. So a lot of
that one.
Yeah, a lot of these games are in anticipation of that.
All right. Well, shall we get into the games?
All right, let's do it.
We are recording now, so whatever you do is going to be forever.
Pick whatever celebrity accent you can do the best and do that. Like Dolly Parton. You're pretty good, Dolly Parton.
Screw this. This flavor text sucks. This isn't even flavor text.
Then we all expectantly await your better option.
Okay. Rondo. It's like circles and stuff. Circles on a board with numbers on them. Numbers and colors. And discs.
and what?
Oh, I am screwed. And discs pulled from a bag. Colorful as well. Rondo.
And
oh my God, is that what I said?
Chris needs to be bombed again.
Discs. Rondo. We can bleep it. All right.
It's the after hours.
Okay. Rondo. Oh, man. I'm already getting giggly. Rondo, published in 2012 by Schmidt Spiele and $9.99 games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 4,194. Designer, of course, is Reiner Knizia. That's why we're here.
All right, we're never recording after a Dolphins game ever again.
Oh, gosh. All right. Brief rule summary. Rondo is an abstract strategy game where the players are attempting to lay colored tiles on matching numbered spaces of the board in an attempt to score points. The game board and... Oh, God. Help me.
we can't have a whole rules explanation with you laughing the whole way through.
I'm good.
I gotta start over, man.
No, I'm good. The game board in Rondo consists of 2 circular rings, which are divided up into multiple square spaces and which are interconnected to one another by small bridges or connections, which are also divided into spaces. Each space on the board shows a single number, anywhere from 1 to 5, in 1 of 5 different colors. In addition to the board, there's also a large draw bag filled with different colored circular tiles, which correspond to the 5 different colors present on the board. Each player has a tray that can hold up to 5 tiles at one time, and which also serves to keep each player's tiles hidden from their opponents. On a player's turn, they can do one of 2 things. They can either play any number of tiles from their tray to the board and then draw 1 replacement tile from the bag, or they can forego playing any tiles that turn and draw 2 tiles from the bag. When a player plays tiles to the board, the tiles must either extend off of the centermost part of the board or extend from a previously placed tile. All the tiles must be placed in a continuous, uninterrupted line and cannot be placed on top of any previously placed tiles. If the colored tiles are placed on a space that matches the color of the number on that space, they will score that number of points. So, for example, if I have a yellow and a red tile in my tray, and on the board are the numbers 3 and 4 in a line, and the 3 is yellow and the red is 4. If I place that yellow chip on the yellow 3, that will score me 3 points. If I score the red chip on the red 4, that will score me 4 points, so 7 total points. That's as simple as an example as I can give you. However, if a player has numerous tiles of the same color in their rack, they can stack all of those tiles on the same number space, thereby multiplying the score for that space by the number of tiles stacked. So thinking about our prior example, if I had 1 yellow and 3 red tiles, I could place the 1 yellow tile on the yellow 3 for 3 points, and then I could stack those 3 red tiles all on the red 4 for 4 times 3 or 12 points on that space. So you can score some serious points in that way. Interestingly, the player also has the option of playing tiles face down on any space, thereby foregoing that scoring on that space, but this may allow them to reach another space to score points that they may not have been able to reach otherwise. So again, one more example. So let's say we have the yellow 3 and then a green 1 and the red 4. But what if I don't have a green tile? Well, that is okay. I can use a tile of any other color, play it face down on that green space, creating a bridge to that red 4 that I can still reach if I do that. Finally, some of the spaces on the board have a gray background to them, and this is important because the game will end once all of the gray background spaces are covered with tiles or the draw bag empties. At this point, the player with the highest total score wins the game. And that is completely and totally how you play Rondo, because it's a very simple game.
Numbers and stuff.
All right, so as I mentioned, the game is quite simple. Doesn't mean it's bad, necessarily. We'll see, right? But I struggled to think of something to ask you all for this game because it is pretty simple. The other night, the 3 of us were playing, and my youngest son, Hayes, who is 9, came in, and he was like, I want to play. And sometimes the games we're playing, I'm like, you can't play this one, unfortunately, because it's just too complicated. But Rondo, I was like, yeah, sit down, play. And he played well. He was able to hang, because it's pretty easy to at least grasp what's going on. But all that to say, I think one thing I could ask is, how did you feel about the mix of offensive and defensive options that are available to you in Rondo? Or do you even feel that those options exist? Or if you're just playing tiles, what do you think about that aspect of the game?
Yeah, given the simplicity of it, I think maybe even calling it offense and defense is maybe a little bit of an overstatement, but I think there are some defensive moves you can do. Obviously, every move that you do is offensive in a way because you're attempting to score points, or you should at least score some points on every move. The defensive side of things, I guess the best you could do is you place a weak position on large numbers to prevent somebody else from doing it.
Right.
I question if that is a wise move or not.
Interesting. Okay.
But we can talk about that more.
Okay.
I want to hear what Bill has to say.
It is an interesting question because I never felt really motivated to be defensive. I mean, there are times when the path as you meander through this board would end up to be striking distance between the 4s and the 5s. And from an offensive point of view, 5 is a pretty big number. I think maybe once I might have crossed over it and flipped a tile, but I don't think I did. I would rather make more points on my end and just hope or trust that the person next to me does not have a 2 or 3 stack to hit the 5, and just felt like the better strategy for me.
That is risky, right? Because we did see this happen a lot. If you end your line of placement right adjacent to a big scorer, you're just asking for somebody, and it may not even be the person to your left.
Maybe 2 more down.
But before it comes back around to you, you can be sure that somebody is going to jump on that spot, right? I think I differ slightly from you all in this, and I think that's good. I think it's good discussion. One of the big decision points for me in this game was how many times do I flip a tile over to that null side and use it as a bridge, not only to get to decent scoring points for myself, but just to deny that spot from anybody else. Yeah, I'm kind of throwing away potential points from those ones I flipped face down, but I am at least denying those spaces to my opponents, which I do think has value. I think there's some debate that can occur there, but I do think that is valuable.
No, I would agree. I definitely think it has value if you can do that well. I think where I start to question its value is that I think, and this is kind of switching topics slightly, but I think so much of this game is dependent on what chips you're pulling out of the bag. It can feel like a good defensive move to, okay, well, I'm going to cover over these, but whatever you cover over, you're also leading towards additional point scoring opportunities. You might cover over that 5, but now you've just opened up the avenue to a 3 and a 4 that are right next to each other, which is almost as powerful, right?
Right.
And yet it's all subjective to what tiles other people have in front of them. And so I found myself trying to be strategic because I did that a lot in one game. I covered over like 2 of the 5s, I think, with a single token because I was like, I'm just going to be the first one to get there and I'm going to cover over it to make sure somebody else doesn't have the ability to make a long run and cover over those. And I think it came back to bite me most of the time because sure, I covered over those spaces, but I was inefficient with my chips in doing so. And then somebody else just grabbed the next best thing that I had just opened up for them by doing that. And it's all dependent on what other people have in front of them. So you may have just unlocked a good scoring opportunity for somebody that wasn't there before. So yeah, it's a tough one.
And I don't disagree, but I think too, one other thing to consider is where are we in the game, right? Because I think the points you're making are valid in the first third to maybe half of the game. But as the game gets towards the end, those more valuable spots become
absolutely
more valuable, right? Because you're starting to look around. You're like, okay, I've got 3 yellows in my tray. And I only see one good yellow number out there. If I can reach it, I'm going to reach for it, even if I have to flip some things over. Because what you don't want to have happen is have a bunch of low numbers, right? So in the first part of the game, I don't necessarily agree reaching for something might open a path to something else. But I do at least think later in the game, reaching for something might just close the door on somebody else for scoring in a certain color.
For me, and this kind of leads into another question, I was always thinking about optimizing my tile board because it had 5 slots, right? And I was going to ask you guys, how hard did you work to make sure that you could fill out all 5 slots versus 4, which was always a balance back and forth as you laid out tiles. So a lot of my logic as I played when I put things out was when I started drawing and I was going to draw the 2 tiles, I wanted to have 5 because that gave me the highest likelihood I could get double tiles for myself.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the tile management piece because there's definitely a rhythm and a tempo that you have to build around the chips because like you said, you have 5 slots and when you just take chips out of the bag, you're taking 2. So if you get to 4, then it's a really inefficient move to just take 1 more to max out your chip count. But obviously having 5 chips in front of you gives you the highest scoring possibility, or the highest likelihood for having double chips, I guess, or triple chips or quadruple chips or whatever to put down on the board. I feel like I was trying to strategize around this. And I was thinking along the same lines as you, Bill, of like, I want to keep the numbers when I'm placing such that if I draw 2 or I draw 4, I'm back up to 5 and I'm not stuck at that 4 number. But again, I feel like it comes back to the bag draws. Like if you're drawing well out of the bag and you're getting doubles of certain colors that are advantageous to you at the time, then that's great, right? You get this rhythm going. If you're drawing stuff that's a rainbow of 1 chip of every color, then you're in this weird position of, well, I've maxed out my board, but I don't have a whole lot that I can do with it. And so I either have to waste chips by flipping them upside down and then I'm back at 0 and I have to rebuild everything. Or you're spending 1 or 2 chips at a time to try to cycle through and get better chips that match up with the ones you already have. And I guess that's part of the strategy of the game, right? But I found myself frustrated by it more so than I found myself thrilled by the strategic opportunities that were there.
Curse these luck elements, right, Jason? These dice rolls and these bag draws. If it wasn't for these bag draws, you just win every time, right?
Hey, it's not even about winning. I'm not talking about winning. I'm just talking about the joy that comes with feeling like you accomplished something or you made a good play. I feel like it was much more circumstantial based on like, oh, I drew the right thing out of the bag more so than it was like, oh, I planned for this and I set up for this and I made this happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I made this happen. It was like, oh, this happened.
Yeah.
Lucky me or unlucky me.
Yeah, I see the point you're making. And if it's not clear, we'll just say it very bluntly here. This game is 100% tactical. Okay. There is no, I see that yellow 5 over there and I've got 3 yellow tiles. I'm going to work my way towards that 5 and score that. That just isn't going to happen in this game. The more you try to work your way towards a number, the more you just facilitate your opponents jumping on it before you. So in a lot of ways, this game is just being in the right place at the right time. So I'm not disagreeing with you in that.
Which makes it a game of chicken of like, well, I'm not going to be the one to move that direction. So you're going to be the one to move that direction.
I don't disagree.
And then somebody else just gets all the chips they need to go that direction anyway.
Sure.
And so,
yeah. So I think the game really comes down to how do I take the best turn possible for myself right now? That's a tactical game, right? A lot of times I think that often implies that it's obvious to me what I'm going to do in my turn. But I will say in this game, I didn't always feel like my choices were obvious. At least some moves, not all moves, but some moves. Felt like I was hemming and hawing in my mind about what really was the best thing for me to do. Should I just draw 2 here? Should I just place 1 or 2? Should I go ahead and lay all 5 down and try to cover these up? There's thought there in a pretty much completely tactical game. Like I said, there's no working towards something 2 turns in the future. But I did think within the tactical element of the game, I was at least entertained.
Yeah, you really want to get 5, right? And the way it works, when you lay anything down, you draw 1. So if you lay down 2 tiles, you'll draw 1 and you'll have that magic 3.
And then I can draw 2 on my next turn.
And get down. So it was the decision balance. Do I make more points putting a 3rd or 4th tile? Or do you gamble in that next turn, you're going to have the 5 that's going to get you something magical.
Right.
And I felt like I was in that angsty moment a lot.
Maybe it gets you something more magical.
Right. Maybe. Exactly.
If you draw the right thing out of the bag, it might get you something.
Or if somebody doesn't take the points you're going to take before you.
Or you have positioned yourself to take advantage in a strategic manner.
Or you draw up to 5 and you have all the wrong colors for the tactical best move that you're supposed to make on that turn.
Could happen. Theoretically. We ready to score Rondo?
I think so.
I think so. William, why don't you start us off?
All righty. Well, I had fun playing this. It's a light abstract game. I think we laid that out. I think we all felt there were times that we were not drawing what we wanted, but other times the stars aligned for decently feel-good large scores. And the seesaw nature of the scoring makes you feel like you're not really out of it. As we're watching the counter tiles go around the outside of it, it was always a flux, and you're in the first sometimes and not in the others. And so that was enjoyable. I think this is a great introduction for abstract strategy games for people who don't do it.
You can see why this was recommended for this feel.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's not too brutal. There's not too much. Just take that, right? You can kind of steal something, but nobody really feels bad. And there's a lot of warm fuzzies, Jason, even if you're not getting things out of the tile. So to me, I had fun even when I didn't win, just because of the give and take nature of it. Yeah. So I'm going to give it a 4. I had a good time playing it.
All right. Nice. All right, Jason, fire away.
Now, to be clear, I did not... I didn't want to use a double negative there. I enjoyed my plays of this game. I enjoyed exploring the tactical opportunities that were in the game. It's definitely lighter. I think the audience for this is family.
For sure.
And that's why it's a Spiel nominee. The rules are dead simple. You explained all of them in the explanation at the beginning. It plays quickly. I guess it just didn't inspire me because of some of that. Yeah, you're going to laugh. So
I'll laugh at anything right now.
Bag draws, the random bag draws annoyed me. There, it's there. All right.
I'm shocked, Chris. How about you? I'm totally shocked.
There's something I just couldn't control in this game.
And it's a tactical game. I'm not saying there has to be deep strategy here. That's not what I was looking for in the game. But you have to look at the whole thing, the whole package, right? And looking at the box, looking at the non-existent theme, looking at the numbers around a circle grid, I'm like, okay, if you want a tactical game that is simple and light, there are better games out there that aren't just a boring grid of numbers with chips on them, that also don't have this ridiculous bag draw thing that just stymies you randomly.
What it really needs is a sideboard so you can put 2 of your unwanted tiles to give you a power up so that you can...
No, like I said,
let's just modernize Rondo.
To
destroy it.
I'm not looking for more mechanisms, more complexity. I think games like this with this level of simplicity can exist and can do it well. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that this is a bad game. I just think that it's not inspiring, right?
I get that.
You didn't even have any flavor text you could read. You made up flavor text for this because it's that boring.
It was good.
Right? And so I guess what I'm saying is I think there are better options out there. Do I think it's a bad game? No. But is it a game that I'm going to go seek out and try to buy? No, it's not. So I give this game a 3.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad game. I would play it if we brought it out on the table, but it's not one that I'm going to seek out to play or buy.
Sense. That makes sense. All right. So Rondo is, I would say, an interesting game for me because it's not the typical kind of game that I like. I talk a lot about tension in board games, and I feel like tension is closely tied to strategy, right? You feel a lot of tension in strategic games because you're trying to see a plan to its conclusion, right? In round 2, I'm making a plan that I'm trying to see to fruition in round 5, and I'm trying to navigate. And all the while I'm thinking, how my opponent's going to mess me up and how am I going to circumvent that? And I feel worried about it. There's none of that in this game. On your turn, you think about what you're going to do because between your turn, so much is going to happen that you just can't account for. And I normally don't like that. But I will say that I do feel like this game does offer you, as I mentioned in the review, at least some decent decisions on how to use your tiles in the best way possible. Do I think this game is the greatest game ever? Do I think it's setting any records or setting the world on fire? No. But I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And I would enjoy playing it again. So I, like Bill, am also going to give Rondo a 4. I thought it was fun.
Yeah. It's a fuzzy logic game.
It's a fuzzy logic game. That's right.
All right. Well, if folks are interested in checking out Rondo, where can they find it? And I think I already know the answer to this, which is nowhere. And my statement to that would be,
this game is super hard to find. This is one of the hardest games that I've tracked down so far. There's one other one that we're going to review in the future. It was even harder, but this one's up there. Mostly because this was published by Schmidt-Spiele, which is a German publisher. It's not English language, which doesn't matter at all because this is entirely abstract. There's no language dependence at all. But I'm saying that to say that it didn't receive a stateside release at all. So it's just hard to get. There are no copies available on Noble Knight. There are no copies available on BGG. I don't know what to tell you.
It makes me wonder about the Hidden Gems business model.
That's right.
Draw a bunch of numbers on a circle and throw some circles on top of it, and you get Rondo.
Yeah, and it's funny you should say that, Bill, just as an aside. I often wonder about that about us.
We just reviewed this game. You're never going to find out.
Right.
You're never going to play. Sorry. But then again, I just found out that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is getting reprinted.
Is it really?
Yeah.
As Tatsu.
Oh, wow.
So if that can get reprinted, why can't this?
Maybe it was because of us.
They heard about us.
That's true.
We're going to take credit for it.
In fact, they emailed me and they were like, hey, we heard your review. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe we can move the needle one day. But I do think these games that are fun and decent will maybe get reprinted one day. And also, I would think that some people just like to hear about them. I think it's kind of fun to hear about a game that's weird and unique, even if you might never get to play it, just to kind of hear what's out there. You know what I mean? So that's how I rationalize this craziness that we do every other week.
Absolutely. When you're weird and unique, you like to hear about things that are weird and unique.
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Rondo. The legend of the great hero Beowulf originates in one of the oldest works of English literature, composed around 800 AD. It tells of the exploits of a young Scandinavian warrior Beowulf, who sails to Denmark to destroy a man-eating monster named Grendel, who's been terrorizing the local population. After a successful outcome to this mission, as well as an encounter with Grendel's horrific mother, the Sea Hag, Beowulf returns home to Denmark to become king. However, there will still be the dragon to challenge our hero. This masterful game by renowned games designer Reiner Knizia, beautifully illustrated by John Howe, the same team that brought you Lord of the Rings, invites you to accompany Beowulf as one of his brave comrades. Will you become the most renowned warrior and succeed Beowulf as king? It will be an incredible test of your wits and your courage.
Good job, Jason.
Beowulf.
Need a little more growl.
King of the Geats.
Beowulf.
The Geets. I looked this up. It's Geets. All right. So it's been a while since we've done a book report.
Oh, yes. I love these.
I feel like it's necessary here.
Let's gather around.
But,
Exactly. Got around the campfire, boys.
So, Beowulf the Legend, published
1970. My high school English teacher lied to me.
Published between 975 and 1025. Publisher is, of course, Old English Literature. The designer, anonymous. Current BGG rank, who knows? No, anyway. Yeah, so Beowulf is a 3,000 plus line alliterative poem. Just kind of impressive in and of itself. It is one of the oldest known English stories and is an important work of English literature. There's some debate over the date, as I mentioned before, since it's really unknown if the manuscript had already been passed down via oral tradition for a long time prior to it being written. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that there was a kind of a tie-in to Cloud Cuckoo Land that I had read before. And what's interesting about the story of Cloud Cuckoo Land is that there's this thread throughout the book that is really about the value of works of literature surviving through the centuries, right? And the value that they have to various generations throughout history. And I guess the thinness of the thread that keeps those things alive throughout history. So I found it interesting that this manuscript, or the story of Beowulf, comes from a single manuscript. We have one copy of it. And that one copy was damaged and nearly destroyed in a fire at one point.
No way.
And so the only way that we have this story written down is from a single manuscript. And I found that kind of interesting.
That's crazy.
But it tells the story of Beowulf the Geat. So I looked this up too. Geatland is actually what is now southern Sweden. Okay. So it's written by an Englishman, presumably, but takes place in Scandinavia. So Beowulf decides to aid the Danish king Hrothgar against attacks from a monster by the name of Grendel, who he manages to kill with his bare hands.
Rips his arm off, I think.
Yeah, rips his arm off and parades his arm around. And then he also defends Hrothgar from a later attack by Grendel's mother, who of course, is angry that Beowulf ripped Grendel's arm off. She is a sea hag who lives at the bottom of a giant lake. So I guess a lake hag. I don't know. Interestingly, Grendel's mother has potential relation to the Norse goddess Freya.
No,
we've talked about
here we go again.
Right?
That weirdo.
Yeah. So you can go back and listen to that episode if you're curious about Freya.
Yeah, because Grendel's mom tries to seduce them.
Yeah, I never found
sexually.
That part. Yeah, you mentioned that. I never found that. At least not in the Wikipedia article.
Is that not true? I'm almost sure that is true. Initially, I said that I thought she tricked Beowulf into sleeping with her, which I think I am certainly wrong about on that now in retrospect. But I think that happened.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it's not true, because I did not do exhaustive research here, but I did not see it in my research. So.
I'm drawing back from my high school senior year non-honors English class, which I very proudly took.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the CG movie that the
Angelina Jolie.
Angelina Jolie was in it,
Yeah.
right? And I think he goes into the cave and like there was that
Something was going down.
Right,
That's some Hollywood edition.
Exactly.
Hollywood taking of liberties there, but. Yeah, so Beowulf later returns back to his homeland and then defeats a giant dragon, but he is mortally wounded by the dragon and he dies. The end.
Bummer. Wow. Well, nobody's perfect.
That's funny because I don't think we did that part in high school. Because I certainly remember Grendel and Grendel's mom. I don't think we ever got to the dragon, or at least I just blocked it out.
Yeah.
He was having an off day.
Book report over. All right.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the passage of story down through different generations. I do really quickly because I promised him that I would. give my nephew a real quick shout out. So I was just visiting family a few weeks ago, and it just so happened that he mentioned Beowulf. He was reading Beowulf in school, and I said, hey, we're getting ready to review a game about Beowulf. And he does not play board games because his family doesn't really dig them, although he's wanting to try to get into them. But he regularly listens to our podcasts.
Oh, wow.
Which blows my mind why somebody that didn't play board games would listen to it, but he says he likes to listen to it.
Cool.
So I told him I'd give him a shout out. So Colton Miller, this review is for you, buddy.
Awesome.
Nice. I like it. All right. Well, as brief of a rules summary as I can give for Beowulf, the Legend.
Lord.
I'm going to take a nap now. So wait me when you're done.
Oh, come on. Have faith. All right. But not too much. All right. So in Beowulf the Legend, players are reenacting the ancient story of Beowulf, taking risks to come out with the most glory by the story's end. The story is laid out sequentially on an oddly L-shaped game board as a series of connected major and minor episode spaces. A single Beowulf pawn moves along this track, with all players choosing to participate or not in these events as they're reached. Most events involve spending cards from your hand. These cards are drawn from a shuffled deck that's common to all players, and cards come in 6 different suits, with each card having either 1 or 2 symbols of its respective suit printed on it, representing that card's strength. Almost all episodes see players using cards to acquire various types of rewards. So these rewards can be victory points or gold, which I'll talk about later. It can be drawing additional cards from the deck, misfortunes, which are negative victory points. You can get scratches or wounds, which end up being negative points at the end if you don't get rid of them.
Awesome.
There are rewards that allow you to, of course, get rid of scratches and wounds. There are scrolls, which can be either gold or victory points. They're kind of randomized, drawn from a bag. And then there are some special cards. These special cards have additional abilities on them.
Special cards.
Bill loves them special cards.
Bill loves them. Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit.
I must own every special card.
So I mentioned minor and major episodes. Minor episodes come in a few different flavors, mainly to spend some combination of cards to get a reward, choosing from a selection of different rewards. There's a recover minor action where players draft new cards from the deck to refill their hand. The most notable of the minor episodes would have to be the risk. So there are several of these throughout the timeline of the story. Each player during a risk chooses to take the risk or not. And if a player chooses to take the risk, they flip the top 2 cards off the deck. And if either or both of those cards matches one of the symbols printed on the risk space, the player keeps those cards. If neither of the cards matches, the player gets no cards and takes a scratch. So I mentioned scratches. 3 scratches become a wound. Wounds are -5 victory points at the end of the game if you don't manage to get rid of them. But of course, there are a few reward types that enable you to remove wounds and scratches. Major episodes come in 2 different flavors, but generally involve bidding cards. The more cards a player bids, the higher that player's turn order when it comes to selecting from a set of rewards that are specific to each major episode. Some of these rewards are good, some of these rewards are bad. The 2 flavors of the major episode is basically around the style of bidding. One is a blind bid, whereas another is a more English style auction with some weird additional rules that I'm not going to get into. It's important to note, however, that for these major episodes, all cards bid are lost. Mm-hmm. Whether you take first place or you take 4th place.
Yeah.
That's important to note. The advanced game, which we recommend, includes one other additional type of auction space. These are ignored in the basic game, but these auction spaces involve gold. So gold is one of the reward types present throughout the other spaces on the map, and it is only useful for these special auctions. These follow the same pattern as the English style auction for major episodes, except that there's only 1 reward and there's only 1 winner, which is the player with the highest bid. The highest bidder spends all of the gold that they bid, but all other players take theirs back for future gold auctions. The game, or the story, I guess, ends with 3 notable major episodes. So 1 in which the players battle the infamous dragon of the story, with many points on the line for the highest bidder and a whopping double wound tile for the lowest bidder.
Beowulf's death, apparently.
One in which the players compare all of their remaining gold tokens for some point rewards, and then a final major episode where all players compare their leftover cards and the number of symbols on them for some additional consolation points at the end of the game. At that point, players total up their victory points, subtracting 5 for each remaining wound, and highest victory points wins the game. And that is essentially how you play Beowulf the Legend.
Good job.
Nice.
That was good.
I feel like that was succinct enough.
That was pretty good.
That was good.
All right.
You didn't get caught in the weeds. Good job.
All right, thanks. I appreciate that. It's the Red Bull.
That's all right. You're feeling alert right now. My pupils are dilated.
We're having to slow down his diction so that you can actually hear it because he's talking 90 miles an hour.
Yeah. All right. So not many games these days have this point A to point B Candyland style, like meandering down the path type movement. How did you guys feel about that in this game?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting first question because the first time we played this, Bill actually pointed it out right away, which I thought was a pretty interesting observation. He was like, you don't see a lot of games like this these days, like the Game of Life or Candyland, where everybody starts at one place and the game ends at this place and we're following a line and things are happening. It's just not often used anymore. And this game is a bit older, but it's an interesting idea. And I have to say, I like it. This was actually my most favorite part of this game. One, in that I feel like it at least attempts to be somewhat narrative driven. And I got that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know if there's little blurbs for each episode in the back that you can read.
Yeah, each spot on the track, Jason was reading part of the Beowulf story, which I enjoyed that. And then from a strategic standpoint, I do think it's interesting and valuable to be looking ahead, right? Because it's all out there. The track never changes from game to game. You can see, okay, this is where I am now, but what am I moving towards? Do I need to hold these cards back? Do I really care about doing well in this auction? Maybe I want to hold these foxes back, or I guess they're wit cards for this future auction because I care more about those rewards.
Right.
Or those events, like there are little things like if you have 2 horns in your hand, you get a scroll or something. So you're thinking ahead a little bit. I liked that part of it.
And the other interesting part about this, I don't think I've ever seen a game like this where we all had the same token. We're not racing to the end.
Right.
We're all Beowulf. We all experience every event at the same time. Mm-hmm. And exactly what you're saying, we have to strategize, be all strategery at each point in the thing so that we're competing with each other in this auction style game. I like that part as well.
Dare I say that this game somewhat reminded me of Phoenicia.
Lord.
It's basically
this game reminded me of Phoenicia too, actually.
I know where you're going with that. But it's basically like a scripted set of auctions, right?
Yeah, it is.
And I mean, this is much more scripted, obviously, than Phoenicia. Phoenicia, I think there was some variability in terms of the order that the auctions came out in. Right. This is always the same auctions every time, which there's pluses and minuses to that.
Sure.
But yeah, just had to throw out that little reference there. All right. Well, what else did you guys
what should we go to next?
Enjoy about this game? Anything?
Enjoy.
What did you think about the special cards? Do you think they played well into the strategy?
I don't know. I never got one.
Wow.
We never played this game where you weren't in it, Bill. So.
When you watched me play the special cards, did that work out well for you?
Yeah. Bill was on the special cards, man. I think you got every single one in every game, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 that Chris took.
I took a couple. They didn't help me.
I don't think I ever had a single special card the whole time. Now, to be fair, I wasn't prioritizing them because I felt like some of the other stuff was maybe more valuable. But what did you think about using the special cards, Bill?
Well, the first game, I was pulling in the special cards because I really didn't have a good feel for how the game was going to progress. And I'm thinking, well, they're special cards. They're going to have some use later. And I don't think I necessarily used them well. They were functional, but I certainly didn't win that game. The second game, I felt like I could be much more strategic with the special cards. And I think they ended up helping me out a lot. So I think they're kind of cool.
Yeah, they are a bit circumstantial, but... Right. As you mentioned, if you can use them at the right time, they can really be massively helpful. Yeah.
So going back to things that we liked, I guess, I would say I enjoyed the variable rewards that came with the different major episodes, right? Because each one you're looking at, it's coming up. You're like, okay, well, that one that's coming up is mainly all good things. And so even if I come in last, I'm just going to get something piddly that's good instead of something that's bad for me, right? Because sometimes
that's not all auctions.
Not all, right? Because some of them have negative rewards, like you take a wound. And so it's an interesting balancing act of looking ahead and being like, okay, well, which of these auctions do I really need to be stocked up enough to at least not take negative points versus which ones have good stuff that maybe I'm interested in, like doing well in it just to get the good thing. I thought there were some interesting decisions to be made there.
Yeah, I like that a lot as well. I found in my second game that this is a better strategy, at least for me, was to look at the ones where you had that negative third and fourth position and just really try to make sure you don't get that wound. It wasn't necessarily to win every one of the events. I just needed to make sure I wasn't in the third or fourth place on those ones that had really bad things happening.
But can you... It's so hard to talk about this game without talking about negatives for me. I mean, but can you ever really ensure you're not going to be in that fourth position, you know?
Because it's a blind bid?
Because, well, it's a blind bid and it's a random card draw, right? And we'll get into risk and all that, but this is an issue I had with this game. I know we're talking about the few auctions where the fourth place isn't soul-crushing, but that's not the norm. I feel like most of them are pretty bad. I like the choice of having different things to choose from depending on how you finish in the auction. I think that's a good idea. But I did take issue that I do feel like, man, there's just some massive differences between first and fourth in some of these auctions. Like the difference between getting 2 scrolls and getting maybe up to 6 points or 3 points and 3 coins and getting a wound is massively different.
Or the dragon episode where it's 7 points is the highest and 2 wounds.
Yeah,
which
I'll
is
get
minus 10
we'll get
points.
to that. I have something to say about that too. But
Well,
it's super. Hold on, but it's super swingy. Because a wound minus 5 points in a game where the winner usually scores in the low to mid 20s is massive, right? And then the first place person is just vaulted way ahead of you. I guess the point I'm making is you can find the game getting away from you real fast in this game. If you have bad cards early, it can just snowball away from you. At least that's my feeling that I got from it. Because they're so disparate, the rewards.
True, but there were some that I won early that I ended up taking the special card with my eye towards knowing that that was going to play out well for me in a future one that had negatives. So I don't know, the first quarter of the track, I felt like I was positioned pretty well for all the negative events all the way around the board. I didn't know how I was going to do necessarily in the dragon when I got to the end, but I felt like I was not going to be taking wounds for the rest of the game.
I don't think you can ensure that just based on special cards.
Well, I drew cards versus getting any gold. I opted not to take any gold.
Yeah, but you were drawing like gangbusters in most of our games. I mean,
I won't deny that. I drew pretty well, but I'll say that I felt good about it, and that was my strategy as well.
So you think that's the only strategy, is just taking the special cards to
no.
avoid wounds?
No.
I'm not being accusatory. I'm just asking. Do you think that's how you do it?
I wonder. I don't know.
Okay.
I think you could maybe have a strong gold strategy depending on how your cards fall, because there's definitely some positive things with the gold, but I don't know. That's just the way I went.
So you're taking the option that awards you likely no points in the current auction just to avoid a negative consequence in the future.
Yes, pretty much.
That sounds fun.
It was. When you got the negative consequence, it was a party.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Well, it sounds like we've thoroughly transitioned into cons.
Yeah, I have a con.
Lay it on us, Chris.
Because we've talked about it a little bit already. This must be discussed. These risk spaces. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even talking about risking it within an auction. You can actually risk in an auction, but I don't even really want to go there. Let's just talk about the risk spaces pre-auction. There are spots on the board where Beowulf lands, and you can, quote unquote, push your luck to see if you get a card that matches a symbol in that space that you can use for future fights, future auctions. How'd you feel about this spot?
Well, they really worked out well for me, Chris.
And they really worked out poorly for Chris, at least in the first game.
I mean, I am not going to come down nearly as negative as you are. I do feel like it is certainly a non-decision at the very beginning that you're going to do the risk, especially if you don't have any scratches.
Sure.
You're going to do it until maybe you have 2 scratches, because when you get that third scratch is when you get the negative 5 points where it becomes a wound.
But you can get rid of scratches.
You can get rid of scratches.
Pretty easily.
True, but if it becomes a wound. So if you have 2 scratches and you're in a risk position, you're now at a point where you're at least got to make the decision But am I going to risk getting a wound because I've got 2 scratches now and I haven't been able to get rid of them?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I take the risk for the cards?
I think my counter to that, the challenge with this space is the opportunity cost of not doing it, right? Yeah, you might be risking it and you might get a scratch, but there's a likelihood that other people at the table are going to succeed at least in some degree. And so if people are succeeding, then they're getting a major leg up by having 1 or 2 additional cards, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in this game, getting cards into your hand is difficult. And so if all 3 of the other people at the table do the risk and they succeed and they get 1 or 2 cards, and I'm just like, I don't want to risk it. Right. I'm already behind.
Yeah.
Right. So you might as well at least do the risk. It's a weird risk reward thing.
It is. Yeah. I want to be as clear about this as I can be. I did not dislike the risk space because it was killing me in every play we had of this. I was just getting very unlucky. That is not why I disliked it necessarily. It was frustrating. The problem I see with the risk spaces, they describe it as pushing your luck. There is no push your luck. Like Jason said, you risk it because cards are king in this game. And that held true in all of our plays. I can only think of maybe once or twice in all the times we played this where somebody did not risk it, ever. And there are numerous risk spaces along the track. Everybody was doing it every time, and it's because everybody understood that cards are king in this game, and they're all that matter. Even if the cards you get in the risk spot don't help you for the next auction, they will help you at some point in the future. So it doesn't make sense to not do it unless you have 2 wounds. Then they'll just take that spot that gets rid of their 2 wounds, and then it'll just jump right back on and risking. So the point I'm making is this is not push your luck. Because push your luck, the simplest example would be ink and gold. Everybody knows ink and gold mostly. Mm-hmm. Ink and gold, you stop and you say, should I take another card or should I quit? That decision point doesn't occur in this game unless you have 2 scratches, which doesn't often happen. Like I said, you can get rid of them. If you don't have 2 scratches, you're always risking. And so it becomes a non-decision. So then it's not push your luck anymore. It's just luck.
It's 2 random cards drawn.
It's just everybody's drawing 2 random cards, and it can become very frustrating when nobody's thinking about that. And it's just part of the game mechanism is, okay, now you're going to flip over your 2 cards. Oh, you got 2 cards. Oh, one of those cards has 2 symbols on it. So it's really like you got 3 cards. Awesome. Oh, Chris, you don't get anything except for a scratch. Sorry. I hated this. I hated this so much. It is so bad. This is one of the worst mechanisms I've ever experienced in the game. Terrible. I could go on. I'm going to stop because we've got to talk about other things, but I hated it. Hated it.
Yeah. Speaking of punishing aspects, not to get too deep into the mechanics of the auction for the major episodes, but it was a very strange auction mechanism to me in really both of them, the blind bid and the English style, that you're fighting to stay in. Basically, it's not really an auction.
You're fighting to not be last.
Yeah, it's not really an auction. You're fighting to stay in as long as possible to not have to take a token, right? Because you're taking the highest numbered token, which is the lowest in turn order for choosing rewards, right? But regardless of where you end up in that battle, you lose all the cards that you spent.
Yeah.
And so you could spend your entire hand to try to ensure something and still get 4th
and then you're screwed
or whatever. And you are done.
Yeah.
It's over for you. Right. And so I guess you could make the argument, well, then don't do that. Right. Hold out and save up for a future auction. Sure. But that's just going to happen in the next one.
Right.
Right. And so I feel like a lot of auction games have tiered costs, right? It's like the person who came in first spends all the cards that they wagered. The person who comes in last spends no cards that they wagered. And the people who came in the middle spend half their cards rounded up or something, right? I feel like that would have benefited this game because it just felt so punishing.
It is.
Like the last game we played of this, I kept trying to do well in auctions, and I wasn't even trying to win necessarily. I was just trying not to come in last. But I was spending so many cards and still coming in last or coming in 3rd out of 4 and depleting my hand every auction. And I guess you could make the argument live and learn, like I said, right? And just don't do that. But I don't think you win that way.
Right.
I don't think that actually helps you. It's not a strategy to hold back.
Yeah.
You have to go for the stuff and try to avoid, at the very least, the negative penalties. And so I felt like I was frustrated by that part of the auction.
It's definitely sunk cost fallacy. And I think you mentioned that too, Bill, when we were playing, this idea of, okay, I'm 2 cards in, still in last. I'm 3 cards in. I'm still in last. And now it's like, do I get out and take last and just lose these 3 cards, which are so valuable? Now I feel like I have to keep going. Right. And then you get 6 cards in and you're out of cards and you still come in last. You're done when that happens to you. You are finished if that happens. And sometimes you just won't be able to avoid that.
I guess you could say that's a game mechanic, right? It's like gambling, right?
Not a fun one.
But it's not a fun one.
Yeah.
So. It's funny because I kind of had fun, but
because you were winning every time.
Bill loves it when he wins. He loves that.
When you
as
can
long
play
as
twice.
Bill's winning, it's interesting.
Exactly.
Oh, man. I can't wait to hear what Bill's going to rate this one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Bill, I feel like you should kick us off.
No, he started last time. We're going to let Bill go last.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
All right.
Okay. Here we go.
That works.
Let's
So you want me to start this time?
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
raining of hate. Here comes the bomb.
All right. Blind bidding, overly punishing auctions, and more randomness than you can shake a stick at. Or a sword, I guess. Or an arm.
Or an arm, yeah.
Grendel's arm. What's not to love about this game, right? So that's what I wrote down initially. That was my first sentence that I wrote down in my notes. And I stand by that because there are some negatives in this game. There are a lot of negatives in this game. Both from a gameplay perspective as well as it just feels like you're getting beat down all the time. Like you're constantly just trying to avoid bad things happening to you. And when I discovered this game actually I found out about through our mining efforts. This was an early game that I found. And I hesitated even putting it on our mining list because the reviews were just all over the place.
All over the place.
There were people who were like, I hate this game. And I even read up on a little bit of the rules and I was like, yeah, it kind of seems like this would be a bad game. Random card draws for auctions, that seems like not a great mechanism. But I read so many reviews on BGG that were like, this game is awesome. It's so much fun. And so I was like, well, hey, yeah, I mean, we got to try it. It'll at least be controversial, right? And I can understand the good reviews. I want to throw that out there. I can understand playing this game, why some people enjoy this game. You're all working together through this story. You're reading the story. You're doing Beowulf, especially if you like the story of Beowulf or a fan of it. You're going through all these auctions. People are flipping over cards and, oh, I got cards that match, or oh, I didn't get cards that match. I understand that part of it, but I just didn't have fun playing it. I think there are games that have that aspect to it. And I know we throw it out there all the time, like Camel Up. Mm-hmm. There are so many moments in that game, or Manila, these stand-up moments around the table where it's like, all right, we're going to roll the dice or we're going to poop a dice out of a pyramid and everybody's going to cheer because it came out right. I feel like they were trying to get there with this risk mechanism and this your auction. Oh, I'm going to risk because I don't have the cards. Maybe I'm going to get it and it'll be this big moment. I had that big moment. I was behind in an auction in one of the games and I risked. I flipped over 2 double cards that matched
4
the
swords.
Symbol, right?
Yeah.
And I blew the auction out of the water and I won the auction and I was like, yay. I guess all that to say, I can understand the random card draw, why people might enjoy it. I did not have fun playing this game. There was too much randomness to it and it felt punishing. Most of the things I was trying to do was trying to avoid bad things happening to me. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't able to even do that very well. So for all of that, I'm giving this game a 2. My streak of bringing bad games onto the podcast continues. At least I only paid $5 for it.
Yeah, that's right. I hate this game. I hate this game so much. This game is in the top 10 worst games I've ever played in my life. I just despise it, loathe it. And I think it's pretty clear that it's not because I'm not a fan of masochistic pain in games, right? The game being punishing doesn't bother me. That's never bothered me. In fact, I like that in games, as long as it feels fair. And that's the thing. That's the thing that drives me crazy about this game is I just think it comes down to who gets luckiest on those card flips and the risks. I really do. I know, Bill, that you feel strongly about the special cards, and I think they have value, and that can mitigate some of that risk and some of that luck. I don't disagree. But still, at the end of the day, the risk spot is an automatic do, and that's another thing. That's a big ding for me. I don't like it in games when it presents you with a choice that's not really a choice. It's not a choice. Nobody was ever thinking about it. It's just a do. And so then you do it, and then the people that hit it the most and get lucky on those spots the most tend to do really well. I look forward to hearing what Bill is saying, and I'm not trying to take anything away from your win, Bill, because I think you played well with special cards. But I do feel like you were hitting the risk spots pretty good in the games we were playing. And I make that point to say that I'm not mad because you won. I just think it matters. I think it matters. Who is getting good card flips on those wrist spots? Because if you're not, you're just going to lose. And so for me, that is not fun. And so for me, this game is bad. I don't think it's broken necessarily. It's just not the kind of game I like at all. So I'm also going to give this game a 2. I think it's bad. Never want to play it again. That's it.
So you don't want to buy my copy?
No, I do not. But I think I might know somebody who might.
Okay. Well, I have to describe my experiences with the game, I guess, before I give it my score. The first game, I will admit, I was totally lucky on the cards I drew. I had 0 scratches that whole game. And I did target all the special cards without any particular strategy, other than as the game progressed, I thought they would become more clear on how to use them. But I also did come in second that first game because Jason was pegging the scrolls the whole time. And he had like 10 or 15 scrolls, I think, by the time we got to the end of the game. On the second play, I also leaned in the special cards, but I did have a strategy in mind where I was looking at each one of those events that had negative third or fourth place scores. And I think that's hugely important. When you take a -5 on any round, it's going to make a big hit when the winning score is 20 points at the end of the game.
Yeah.
Plus or minus 50 points. The other part that I'm with you, Chris, I feel like early on in the game, if you do lose a couple of those rounds and you are in the last place and you're not positioning yourself for some of those other places later on, that the game is decided. Sometimes it can be decided in the first quarter, and there's not a lot you can do.
At least decided that you're going to not win.
Right.
Maybe the winner is not decided, but you can be pretty sure. There was one game I was like, I'm sure I'm going to come in last, and I came in last by a mile, and I knew that after like the third auction.
Because I would look at my hand and I would have like 14 cards and you had 4 or something.
Because I wasn't hitting the risks.
Right. Exactly. I also think I had a lot of the cards because I didn't participate in the gold. And in the first game, I think that made Jason win. So I think there are multiple paths to victory in this game. However, I don't think it's necessarily a great game. I still had fun playing it, but I'm going to give it a 3.
Interesting.
I'd play it again. I don't think it's as horrible as Chris says it is, but I think it's not on the top of my list. So
interesting. You did a good job playing devil's advocate. I thought you were going to give it a 4.
Really?
Yeah, I think you defended it well.
Oh, well, good. Like Jason was saying, there's a lot of people out there that I think liked it. If you have people that are going to cheer around it and not going to be a sourpuss like Chris.
Yeah. Cussing and throwing things.
Cussing and throwing, yeah, exactly. Don't play with game reviewers. But yes, I think people can have fun playing it for sure.
Okay. Well, we can find this game at Noble Night.
Awesome.
Or on Jason's shelf.
On Jason's shelf. There is a copy available at Noble Night, our sponsors. If you would like to support them and support the podcast, please feel free to purchase it there. Our discount code is 22GEMS. You get 10% off your order there. There are also 28 copies available on the BGG Marketplace for pretty cheap. So it's pretty readily available at this point.
Awesome.
And those are our thoughts on Beowulf.
Beowulf the legend.
King of the Gits.
King of the Gits. King of the Geets.
Oh, yeah.
Indigo is a deep shade of blue obtained from the Indian indigo plant since ancient times. Its deep hue is a symbol of eternity and immortality. The color has a soothing effect and provides a clear head, which is exactly what players need during the game, as they search for the most precious gems.
What
You tell
what
me.
kind of accent was that? You were like fluctuating between Australian,
That's right.
British,
Bill.
Bill.
Bill, that's right. It always comes back to Bill. Thank goodness that flavor text was short.
I crushed it. You guys are killing me.
You crushed it, Bill.
It wasn't as bad as I made it out.
All right. Indigo, published in 2012 by Ravensburger. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 1,462. Designer of this game is Reiner Knizia. I'd like to give a shout out to one of our guild members. This game was recommended by BGG user Pete K. I think it's the first time we've given him a shout out, so thank you, Pete, for the recommendation. All right, brief rule summary for Indigo. Indigo is a tile laying game where the players are attempting to guide different colored stones along pathways by way of tile placements into their scoring goals and away from their opponent's scoring goals.
That was a very run-on sentence.
Yeah, but it makes sense.
Of course, I've seen it.
All right. So if you've played Suro, it's a similar idea where you place a tile down. If there's something next to that tile, it moves along the lines that are pre-printed on the tile, and it's traveling across that tile, basically. That's how you're making the stones move. Here we go. Jason, you ready? The game board in Indigo is made up of a hex-shaped array of small hexagons.
Nice.
Or a hex of hexes.
I love those hexes of hexes.
At each of the 6 corners of the board, a blue tile is placed, upon which is housed a single yellow gem. At the center of the board, another blue tile is placed, upon which 5 green gems and 1 blue gem are placed. In between each vertex of the large board, so in other words, along the long edges of the game board, are 2 small circles. Different colored markers will be placed within these circles during setup, with 1 color belonging to each of the players. The colors placed in the circles designate which players will score points if they manage to get a gem to leave the board along that long edge of the play area. So let me explain a little bit. So let's say I'm blue and Bill is white, and the 2 markers that get put along an edge are a blue marker and a white marker. That means that Bill and I share that edge of the board. And if we're able to direct a stone off of that edge of the board, we will both score equal points for that. Whereas in some situations, a 3-player game, for example, both of those circles might have the same color on them. And so that edge just belongs to that one player. They will only score for that edge. The players will score 1 point for yellow gems, 2 points for green gems, and 3 points for the lone blue gem. If a player's tile placement causes 2 or more gems to crash into one another along their traveled paths, those gems are removed from the game with no points awarded. After placement of a tile and movement of gems, if applicable, the player will then draw a new tile and their turn ends. The game will continue until no gems remain on the game board. At that point, the players will reveal their captured gems from behind their screens. So I didn't mention this as hidden information, what gems you've captured. And the player with the highest total points wins the game. That's pretty much it.
Did you mention that the gems are worth different amounts of points?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. So yellow 1, green 2, and there's 1 blue gem on the board that's worth 3.
I just take a nap during your rules explanations and then come back.
I'm used
just making sure.
After all these years, I'm used to your disrespect. It's fine. All right. So I think a good place to start here. We've been talking a lot about this lately on Hidden Gems. It just keeps coming up. It's not intentional, but I do feel like a lot of older designs have this aspect. Modern game design, outside of train games, doesn't seem to rely upon shared incentives as much as older ones do. As simple as this game is, place a tile, move stuff, draw a tile. There is a shared incentives aspect to this game in that usually if you're scoring points, somebody else is scoring points with you. And so there is some debate or some control that goes into how do I want to navigate this stone or stones to where I score, but this other person doesn't score with me, right? So some interesting things going on there. What do you guys think about that shared incentive aspect to this game?
I loved it, partly because I like team games where you're working together to do things. And this whole frenemy component, like a person that's your friend 1 minute will not necessarily be your friend to the end. It's definitely always in flux. But once you got the stone off the board, it was kind of fun to high five each other because we did it kind of thing.
Right.
I like that in a game.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. One interesting tactical element that I thought it brought in was examining turn order.
Yeah.
Because being able to place 2 tiles in sequence, 1, 2, can really influence the direction that a stone is going. And so
Yes.
if I know that there's a stone that's headed towards the edge of the board that me and Chris share, and I know that Chris is right after me in turn order,
Right.
I'm going to send that stone that direction because I know Chris can play right after me and get it even further that direction. And right. I mean, there are some crazy things that can happen with these paths, but eventually you kind of reach a point where it's like, all right, well, it's probably going that direction.
Yeah.
It's never guaranteed, but I thought that was an interesting wrinkle.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there because it can be really tempting to want to table talk in this game. And I think we accidentally did it a couple times. We try not to do that in games, but it can be really tempting, not just for scoring points for yourselves, but also to shift stones away from other players, right?
Right.
You're kind of like, okay, I'm going to put this right here, Jason. And now you can place a tile here if you're holding the right tile. And that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Where you can direct it away from their goal and towards our goals, right? There's definitely something going on there for sure. And then it also affects how you place, because there's definitely a component of, well, if I place a tile there, then Bill and Cameron are going to place a tile here and here. And now that gem is
gone.
It's
complete
gone.
Opposite
right?
end of the board.
It's on the opposite side of the board, right? It's interesting dynamic.
I will say the fun part about this game and the frustrating part about this game is if the tile's not off the board, you don't know if it's going in or not. Because it can be one space away. Yeah, you're never safe. And there's a great angsty tension to it because you think that, okay, I can put this one in the bag. It's going off. Let me go play defensively somewhere else. Or go steal somebody else's stone. And the next thing you know, the one that you had already counted in the bag is gone.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So you brought it up in Rondo, so we'll bring it up here. Offense and defense. So there's an interesting defensive move here of the crashing marbles into each other.
Yeah.
Were you guys able to use that to your advantage? What did you think about that?
Oh, Chris certainly did. I was angling for the blue stone.
Heartbeat.
Yeah, I was angling for the blue stone, and I think Chris kind of did the calculus, thinking he was never going to divert it, and just kind of sniped it there at the end. I love it. I think it's a great game dynamic. Certainly frustrating in that instance, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you can start to see there's no way that gem's coming back to me, my focus immediately begins to switch to how can I just destroy it, right? Which I think is an interesting option, but not easy to do because oftentimes when you're doing that, you're kind of on your own.
Yeah.
And so it's not guaranteed for sure. What did you think?
I liked it. I thought it added another layer to what is admittedly a simple game, but it's just another thing to think about. And it's a viable strategy, I think, and something that you have to be always on alert for. Because even on the offensive, you can be like, oh man, I'm going to get this gem. But if you leave it open for somebody to crash it into something, you're in trouble.
So there's a subtlety to that we started playing with. Instead of trying to take a stone and lead it to your end, you could take a track and put it on your enemy's goal and try to steer their goal entrances away from anything positive.
Yes.
Which I think is kind of an interesting strategy. I don't think any of us really played that all the way through, but I think in this game that would be just an interesting thing to explore further.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I am interested to play this game more is I think we were just starting to kind of get that. It's so tempting because I think not everybody's played Suro, but a lot of people have. And that's how Suro plays, right? You place and you move, right? And it's just so hard to get out of that frame of mind of, well, I place next to a gem and move it the way I want it to go. But like you said, Bill, that option of I don't have to place a tile that moves any gems. Maybe I bring those paths closer to gems, right? Opening more opportunities for me to hook in, right? I think that's an interesting aspect to this game.
So I feel like maybe the one other major thing to talk about in this game is how you acquire tiles. And there's actually a variant for this. And we played it both ways. One in which you only ever have a single tile. So you're drawing a random tile and that's the tile that you're going to play on your next turn. And one where you have two tiles. And so you're always choosing from one of the two tiles that you have behind your screen. Did you guys prefer one way over the other? What did you think about the two different styles?
You know, that is such a tough question to answer because they're both agonizing in their own way. I liked the one tile in that you had to just figure out your best way to use it. And to me, I felt like that was a catalyst for me to do things like, hey, let me put this tile as a defensive move on my opponent's goal because there's nothing I can do that's really all that favorable in an offensive way. When you had the two tiles, you were more likely to have the thing that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it almost became less of a game of making a difficult decision kind of thing. Right.
Yeah. So it becomes more deterministic.
But there's also a lot more risk there because you know that your opponents probably can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
you're thinking harder about where do I actually place. Yeah. It's an interesting trade-off.
It is, but I like the fact that my opponent may not have that thing that's going to ruin my day. Right. And so even though I might not have my thing either, I don't know. I mean, both of them I think are good games and both of them are fun to play. But I think I would say for people who get the game, definitely play with both variants because it's pretty different games.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think this is a great question, Jason. This is so hard. I am not sure which one I prefer. And it's funny because normally in most variants, there's one that seems to be just clearly superior, right? You always play this way. I'm not sure there is a superior one here. I think it depends on what kind of mood you're in, honestly. The deterministic aspect does eliminate some of the luck, maybe your group prefers that and maybe you can calculate out things more. But I agree with Bill. I do feel like the single tile draw introduces a little bit more tension, which I didn't dislike. I enjoyed it somewhat. And it did have that kind of lemonade out of lemons feeling of, well, maybe this isn't exactly the tile I wanted. I'm going to try to make the most of it. But I know it's happening to everybody else occasionally too. You're not always getting exactly what you want. And that's the thing about the 2 tile draw. Unless they just got really unlucky, you can pretty much assume the person to your left is going to have what they need every time. Right. So yeah, it's tough.
All right, listen up, folks, because this is an instance where I don't feel like randomness makes a game worse.
Wow.
I think that this game is better with the single tile.
Interesting.
So let it be known.
I'll mark this day in your calendar that Jason said.
Because in most games where there are more options, there's more degree of control over how randomness affects you. I err towards it's better. Like Spectaculum is a great example. Right? We play with the variant where you have more choice of what you're drawing out of the bag. I think that's superior to the base version of that game because of the type of game that it is. I think that this game, because of the type of game that it is, I didn't dislike it with the 2 tiles. But I think this game is better straight up with a single tile because, like you guys have mentioned, the lemonade out of lemons thing for the style of game that this is, I personally just think it's better that way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And maybe even adds a little push your luck to the game, right? Like, I'm going to place this tile here and hope Bill doesn't have a tile to divert away so Cameron can bring it home, right? You're kind of risking it, right, a little bit, which introduces an interesting element.
Right. Or have that frustrating moment. It's like, I'm one space away and I don't have the tile I need. And then somebody steals it from you. But yeah.
All right. Well, anything we didn't like about the game?
It's funny because I have Tsuro on my phone and I played it for a while and I felt like that got old to me. It was kind of meh to me after a while. And it's very, very similar kind of game. I wonder if this could feel that way, but on the other hand, I don't think it would just because of the competitive aspect of it. I love the fact that you're shooting at a goal. To me, the competitive aspect of it and the frenemy part of it, I think is a really cool interpretation of this kind of game.
Yeah. I would say for me, the only thing is you can find at times in this game, especially towards the end when there aren't a lot of gems left on the board, depending on how people were playing and working together, you might find yourself on the outside looking in where gems are just kind of away from your goals. Maybe there are 2 or 3 left and there's just not really much you can do about it, you know? And then at that point, it becomes a little bit more defensive. Like, how can I crash these or maybe make them go through somebody that I care more about than somebody else? But it can get away from you a little bit, I guess, for lack of a better word. I don't see that as a huge con, but it can happen.
I would say I agree with both of y'all's points. I don't really have much to add to that. I would say, to your point, Chris, the fortunate thing is that even once you're in that situation, the game's probably over in the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's close.
So it's not like you're sitting there for an extended period of time in that state.
Sure.
Right.
All right.
Final thoughts?
I'm ready, man. All right. So I'll just come right out and say it. I think it's pretty clear. I enjoyed my plays of this game. I'm going to give this game a 4. I think this game is a good game. It's funny you just mentioned Tsuro, Bill. This game is right on par with Tsuro. I think I might like Tsuro a little bit better. And I know I just killed some people when I said that. There's a guy who I talked to on Instagram, Eric Merchant. I know he's listening because he follows our podcast. He's a Knizia file. And I know I just slayed him when I said that. And I'm sorry.
Chris is wrong.
I'm sorry, Eric. I do. I think Indigo is fun. It would be a coin flip which one I would rather play from day to day. But in Tsuro, it's just kind of you know, and your destiny is in your hands. You can control it somewhat. There's some craziness that can happen in Tsuro, but you're guiding your way through the game, right? As I mentioned in my cons, it's a mild con, but this game, point scoring, especially towards the end, can just get away from you. And then you just feel like a spectator and you're just trying to play defense and play a spoiler, which isn't necessarily bad, but that's the one thing that kind of maybe made it just a fraction less than Tsuro for me. But again, all that to say, I think it's good. If somebody want to play it, I'd be down for it. I think it's fun. I'm going to give Indigo a 4.
Awesome. Chris is totally wrong. This is way better than Tsuro.
I know a lot of people would disagree with me on that. That's a hot take right there.
Well, but part of it, I think, is to me, it's more social. I like the fact that you can team up with people, and I think that's very cool. For me, there's just so many things to like about the game. I like the spatialness of it. I love the fuzzy logic again that, you know, a couple of the things we're reviewing tonight has, where you don't really have the complete picture of a long-term strategy. You have to decide what you're going to do as it becomes your turn because the board is going to change every time you get it. I like the fact that there's a lot of different overall strategies you can explore with this game. Unlike Tsuro, you can place your tiles somewhere completely different, right? And block goals. And who knows how that would play out in the long run. And again, just the partnering with other people, I found it really cool when you could make a plan come together. I love the fact that I could play this with my family and they'd probably like it. So I'm going to give it a 4 too, just because, I thought it was great.
Awesome.
All right. This is a 4 for me too. I'm just going to come out and say it. And I'm with Bill on this one. I haven't played a ton of Tsuro, but I don't know. I think even just the fact that there are different scoring potentials and you're going for a goal versus just trying to hang on and not be the last one out. Right? Yeah. I think that style speaks to me more than the inverted race of just try to be the last man standing.
Yeah, I get that.
But I think there's value in both games. Don't get me wrong. But I think I enjoyed this more than Tsuro. This is a game that I'm probably going to ask you to borrow this game so I can take it home and play it with my kids, right? Yeah. This is a game that I think my family would enjoy. Maybe it could even get my wife to play this game, right? And that alone, I think, speaks to its simplicity, but still a level of fun, right? Games that are just super simple, it's not something that I'm necessarily going to take home and play with my family because I don't like to be bored when I play board games. But this game is enough that I would enjoy playing it and that I think they would enjoy playing it. And so, yeah, I enjoyed what am I trying to say that's not redundant? So
I enjoyed the enjoyable aspects.
I enjoyed the enjoyable aspects of this.
Indigo is a game.
It's a game. It was enjoyable. And I enjoyed the enjoyable aspects of this enjoyable game. Yeah. Yeah. 4.
I love it.
There you go.
Nice. All right. Well, if this sounds interesting to you, and I hope that it did, good news, there are copies of this game available at Noble Knight. Several copies, actually, so you can pick it up there. There are also 11 copies on the BGG marketplace as well.
And those are our thoughts on, what's this game called? I've already forgotten. It's
Tsuro.
No. Beowulf. No, wait a minute. Indigo.
It's Indigo, Bill. All right,
those are our thoughts on Indigo.
Nice.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Hidden Gems. If you're enjoying what we're doing on the podcast, and we hope that you are, please remember that it's a huge help to us when folks like yourselves give us a rating or review on the various podcast platforms out there, or when you follow us on social media. If you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Hidden Gems Podcast. And now with the new Discord channel, definitely go check us out over there as well.
Yep.
Check out the BGG Guild if you'd like to interact with us or if you have a game that you'd like to share that you feel is a hidden gem. Until next time, I'm your host, Jason.
This is Chris.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening.
This episode of Hidden Gems, number 40, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on September 25th, 2022. Join us again in 2 weeks as we discover which Hidden Gems host has nerves of steel and the steadiest hand as we take a look at 3 lesser talked about dexterity games. How many times will Bill knock over the Tower of Blocks? Tune in to find out. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Ghidorah. Our Discord channel is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member Snoozefest. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Katelyn Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Katelyn Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at boardgamegeek.com, guild number 3874. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.